Hey friends, Andy here. Welcome to another week of the Slightly Off Script Marriage Podcast. This week, we are again bringing you a live episode, an episode recorded at Hope Church in Cranston, Rhode Island. I love this church. I love the staff. And man, the people were amazing. As we spent 2 days together, we did sessions on marriage values, and we ended the time together with this question and answer. And this group asked us some insightful, challenging questions. And I'm so excited to share this with you. I also just want to remind you, as we mentioned in last week's podcast, that we are now able to help you plan your next memorable getaway. That's right. I'm now a certified Travelmation travel advisor. And so if you are looking to escape the cold, get to somewhere warm, if you're looking at your summer plans, maybe it's that next cruise, next Disney trip, next all-inclusive, I would love the opportunity to give you some options. So all you have to do is reach out to Andy Needham at travelmation.net. Travelmation as an animation, so with an M, travelmation.net. If you reach out to me or send me a direct message on one of our social media channels, let's make some memories. Invest in your marriage, invest in your family. That's one of the things that we love to do. Well, without any further ado, let's jump right in to this week's episode.
Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I'm one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with my favorite guy, the most handsome man in the room, no offense everyone, Andy Needham.
We are coming to you today live from Hope Church in Cranston, Rhode Island. One thing I love about this is that we have sort of two ways of doing our podcast.
Yep.
One is that we sit in a room in our house and don't wear pants.
Yep.
And the other one is we invite about 150 people to come in and not into our house without pants, but in another setting.
I think everyone in this room is really happy that this is not the first one.
That's very good. What's happening tomorrow, Bethany?
All right, it's a big day. Everyone's going to be sick of hearing this from me, and I feel like anyone who follows me on social media, this is fair warning. You are about to be puppy bombed. It's going to be obnoxious. I make no apology. So if you're on social media, you happen to follow my Instagram, and you just are like, you know what? I need a break from politics. Come to me for puppies. We are picking up a golden doodle tomorrow.
That's
yeah.
right.
Oh, there's applause for that. I love that.
We are bringing the country together.
So she's very red in color. So we named her Maple, which is a little bit to her color, but also that I grew up in Canada, a little nod to that. And then, of course, because we are a sports family and we always give our dogs middle names, her middle name is May after Ann Michael May, obviously. So thank you, Ann Michael. So yeah, Maple May Needham will be coming home, and because I like to start trouble with everyone, 2 of my coworkers are also in on this. So we're actually picking up 3 puppies tomorrow and transporting them back to New Hampshire.
Bethany typically does most of the driving when we're out and about just because she gets car sick. But she told me tomorrow I must do the driving home. So that was important for you to make sure of. And I will say also that this week, though we're doing pretty good with this situation, I did have to tell you, like, hey, I've looked at our Amazon account. You need to slow your roll on the puppy equipment.
I got a text from our daughter who's in college, and she can look at our Amazon orders. She's, Mom, I saw all the stuff that Dad ordered for Maple. She's going to love it. And I was like, that wasn't Dad. That was me. And he told me I need to stop. And then she just texts back, boo.
All right. So today we're going to do, as we've done with many of our live gatherings, we're going to get into some questions that came from the people in the room here. We had dozens of amazing questions, and we try to gather them by theme or topic. And some of these, honestly, are due their own episode, a long conversation. But we're going to do our best to give maybe a few principles or things that we have learned around these different topics and questions. You ready to go?
Yeah, I would always preface, we are not marriage counselors or experts or certified in anything. So
send your angry emails to Bethany@BethanyNeedham.com. All right. So first question here is this: what is your favorite part of marriage, and what's your least favorite?
So my favorite part of marriage is actually something that increases with time, which is good because it gets better and better, is actually, I would call it like the safety of just our intimacy and the vulnerability of how well we know each other. And I love that when at this place in our marriage, that when we're in a space together, that I feel incredibly comfortable with him. We know each other so well. We have learned to read each other's body language. And sometimes that can be a pro and a con, but we were saying it last night that being able to do events like this, one of the things I love is how comfortable and safe it feels to be with him on a platform, like just to know each other at that level. That's honestly one of my favorites.
All right. Other side of the coin, what would you say is your least favorite?
So my least favorite, honestly, is flipping that coin. With that intimacy comes vulnerability, and probably one of my least favorite parts of marriage is the hurt that I can experience in that level of intimacy and vulnerability. And that happens sometimes where we intentionally or unintentionally can hurt one another. And when you're that deep with someone, it is not a small kind of a wound. And so probably my least favorite is when you take that risk. With it comes the risk of being really deeply hurt. So
this is a C.S. Lewis quote. He says this: "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries and avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in a casket or coffin of your own selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable." And I think that is one of the realities of marriage, that it is one of the deepest human loves that you can experience. And at the same time, some of the most pain comes from the same source.
yeah.
All right. Second question. We talked last night, and we've shared this before on our podcast, that one of the ways that we live out authenticity, and we say this isn't necessarily need to be true for everyone, but it's worked really well for us, is that we have an open policy in terms of access to one another's phones at any time, search history, all that kind of stuff, and then also our journals, and both of us are journalers. And the question is, to have a trusting relationship, is that essential? Is that an essential thing to have?
Yeah, I can't remember if we mentioned it last night, but this would be one of those things. I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to do that in your marriage. It has something that we have chosen to do. I can tell you why I've chosen to do that, which can only speak to our relationship, but a lot of the circular reasoning, I told you I've gotten a lot of kickback on this one, and a lot of the kickback usually comes because for me, I'm like, I don't have any secrets, he can have access. And then the question, probably the most common question is, if you trust one another, then why do you need to do that? And I hear that, like I've said that myself. And again, where it comes back circle is, if you have nothing to hide, then why would you not? And so one of the things, I was actually talking to Andy about this. I teach this at work. I do this work around healthy habits. I don't know if you're familiar with the book Atomic Habits.
James Clear is the author of that
Yeah,
book.
James Clear. But he talks about in building habits, one of the advice that he gives is to make your good habits easy and your bad habits hard. And so I actually apply that to this. And how I do that is having this open phone, open journal concept for me is actually less about that I don't trust Andy and more that I don't fully trust myself. And the one thing that I know, and some of this just from my own journey, is that the enemy loves to find any slight opportunity to get his foot in the door on things, and especially in marriages and families. And so when there are spaces in my marriage, not that they do have dark places, but could easily be a place that something could hide, I actually want to go above and beyond to put a spotlight on it, to be like, you're not hiding here. And so for me, the whole make good things, for me, I want to make that temptation even more difficult than it would be in the norm. And how that's more difficult is if he is able to check my phone, just that knowing that he's doing that makes that a more difficult place for the devil to get his hand or his foothold, if you will, involved in that. And so Again, I don't make that prescriptive. I don't think that's like everyone should do that. Even in journaling, I think how we journal, it works, but you may journal in a way that kind of sharing doesn't. Like, it's okay for you to have a journal. You don't share with your spouse. That's okay. Just for us, that's been one of those things that has been really helpful.
I would say I feel less convicted about the journal. And for me, that's been a gift because I have an easier time sometimes writing and processing my emotional state than I do verbalizing it. And for me, that works out well. And I think you could have spaces where you want to process your internal thoughts that, are unpolished that you may not share with your spouse. I think though that the phone one, I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule, but I would really challenge anybody. The fact of the matter is that if you want to do things that are unholy and unbecoming and against your marriage, just because I share my phone with my wife, like I could find a way around that. Like if I was so intense on it, there are a lot of ways to get another phone or whatever it is. I'm not saying that's like a good thing, but it is like what she just said. Let's make it difficult to do the things that could be leading my heart astray. And that's how I feel about it. I feel more strongly convicted that more people should consider the sharing of the phones because so much of our life is on that. Whereas the journal, I don't feel quite as strongly about. So, yeah.
For what it's worth, I also want, this isn't 6 p.m. every night we sit and hand over our phones and there's search. It's just an open. So sometimes I think people get intimidated. There's this, they're grabbing my phone.
We did that with our kids, but we don't do that with each other.
Yeah, with our kids every day, like 2 times a day, give me your phone. But with one another, it's honestly just the aware. But there have been times in our marriage where there has been a sin issue that I firmly believe that the Holy Spirit stirred in me, like, I need to check his phone. And I actually think that was God's kindness to protect our marriage. And that's one of those things, is being sensitive. I think sometimes there have been times where God's Spirit has stirred in us to ask a hard question of one another. And so in the phone, like, I'm not searching his phone all the time and vice versa, but there have been times on both ends where I've had stuff, and it's not this awful thing, but it's a direction that it's going. And I believe God's Spirit putting it on Andy to be like, this might be a good time to check her phone. And then it allows us to do that work, to be like, hey, you know what? You're right. I need to be careful.
Well, it's a hard check for me too, because if I meet somebody out in our community, a neighbor or somebody at the gym who's the opposite gender, and they want to connect about something, there's appropriate ways to do that. I feel actually more safe having those contacts on my phone because I know, and it even guards the conversations I'm going to have and vice versa. So that's just another example of that space. So that's great. All right. This one's not easy. This is going to be a tough one. And I appreciate the vulnerability of the person who wrote this. What advice or tips would you give to someone who has faced betrayal in their marriage, especially hidden addictions that come to light and deeply affect a relationship? How do you move forward when it impacts your identity and leaves you constantly feeling compared?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for being vulnerable and trusting us with that. This could be its own episode. Again, I'm not a marriage counselor, so I'm just going to speak from my own journey in this. This is something that we have walked in our marriage, and there's not specifics there. I can speak because Andy did open up of our journey with his wrestling with pornography. That was a really hard thing for me in our marriage. It came up a couple of different times, one early on in marriage and then another time later on. And actually, I think I can be open about the most recent time was one of those scenarios I was talking about where I actually felt like God his Spirit was like, you need to ask your husband about this. And I had no reason in that moment to actually know that something was going on except that sort of stirring. And to Andy's credit, when I did ask him, he was honest and he admitted and confessed what was going on. And at that point, different than the first time we went through it, we had been married a long time. And that was a moment I will forever remember. Like, in that moment, I did feel that betrayal, and I wrestled with what's wrong with me and like, how am I not fulfilling? And I'll tell you a couple things that happened from that moment. One, we go back to community, right? I actually initially crawled into our guest bed and tried to isolate. I felt so embarrassed and so much shame, and I didn't know what to do. And in that moment, because this had been a value now for years, I'm like, nope, we're not doing this. So I reached out to a close, trusted friend. I did not know that this close, trusted friend had actually walked through a very similar journey until I opened up to her and said, this is what's going on. This is what I'm feeling. And then this is how vulnerability works, right? Somebody has to go first. And so after I shared that, she then opened up to me that she had walked through with her husband this same journey. And one of the things she said to me that has honestly shifted me into hope for my marriage is she's, in terms of pornography, she's the thing that is hard to accept, but has proven to be true for her and her marriage, is that her, and in my case, my husband's addiction to pornography actually had nothing to do with me. It wasn't about me. It wasn't something that I wasn't fulfilling. This was actually something that he needed, the work that he needed to do. That's not maybe always across the board, but in this case, it broke something that I felt like the enemy was trying to plant a seed and a lie in me. And it helped me to actually look at my husband in a more compassionate and loving way and be like, okay, this actually isn't about, it affects me for sure. I'm in this, but this is an opportunity for me to be like, what do we need to do? What help do we need to get you? How do we walk through this together? And a big step in that, which for me was, I cannot be your accountability in this. That's not, again, I can play a part in that. And obviously I receive emails, but like one of the things that we move forward with was, I'm like, I need you to find men. There needs to be people that come alongside of you and walk with you in this, because I also need to do some of my own healing in this, and I want to love you through this. But in some ways, for me to heal and start building trust, I need to know that you have people in this that are not me. And hopefully that someone answers, but...
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you touched on that I think is critical, and we've done this for each other, is we're not each other's savior. It's not our job we do need to give grace, and there's a type of forgiveness that is important, but even forgiveness is not blind trust. Hey, in this situation that you're walking through, I'm going to walk through it with you, but I need you to have a conversation with X or Y, or find somebody. And we've done that for each other with different situations that we've walked through. And that's where that community element comes into play. And that's difficult. There's been times when one of us didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So that's not an easy thing. And betrayal, this kind of goes back to our first question. This is our deepest fears, our deepest concerns, our deepest vulnerabilities are on the table in marriage. And when sometimes we are going to, in our sinfulness, strike at those things. And it is not an easy or quick process or something that you could just do in isolation to be able to rebuild that.
I would also just remind us that forgiveness and trust are not the same things. That for my journey in this was a lot about forgiving him, but forgiving can be like, I forgive you, but trust is built over time. And that was like, we had open communication. I absolutely love you, and I'm choosing to forgive you, but I need time. I need time to build trust. And so part of that, him having conversations with other guys, he actually gave me very gracious permission to not just ask him hard questions, but if I felt like he was not being honest, he gave me permission to go directly to his guys and be like, I need you to go in. He's not listening to me. And that actually is an ongoing agreement that we have. Again, this is a very tight circle. This is not, I can go to any guy and be like, go beat up my husband. But it was like, that was part of actually him gifting me to build trust, was him actually being like, I am telling you it is okay for you to talk to me. If you feel like I'm not responding, I'm not hearing you, go to these guys, whatever it takes. And that, to me, communicated, yes, this is real for me. I'm struggling with this, but I am struggling for our marriage. I am actually fighting through this. It wasn't perfect progress, not perfection, but it definitely laid out a path for healing and trust.
Well, I think one of the things I'd say is that for me personally, two of the things that put my marriage in the most jeopardy that started very young, these are things that started when I was in my teenage years. One would be pornography, and then the other would be anger. There was a season of our life in our early marriage where those things had mastery over, I was in bondage to those things, and God brought through repentance incredible freedom. And so I'm free from the mastery of those things, but it doesn't mean that in a moment of stress, in a moment of weakness, in a moment of conflict, I used that example yesterday of somebody who's an addict in recovery. There's always that temptation to go back to that old false idol And so like I live in freedom from the mastery of it, but I think wisdom says that I need to continue to walk in the freedom of having good support and help on those areas. And I think by the power of the Spirit, I don't feel like those things have mastery over my heart in my life, but it doesn't mean that it's not a danger. And so that's a big thing to be able to draw the difference between. All right. After that beautifully light one, here's another nice one. What strategy would you use to avoid arguments escalating, especially in the midst of being really angry? So I guess I can start on this one because I just confess that's been a challenge for me. I think that the ground floor for this that I've had to learn is, what is the point? What are you trying to accomplish in conflict? I think I've spent a lot of my early years trying to win an argument rather than get to a place of health. And like I'm pretty good at arguing, and we have very different styles. I'm quick on my feet with words. That's a very dangerous thing. I can bring a lot of intensity. I can bring a lot of shame towards Bethany and trying to make her feel like she's doesn't understand something or she's dumb. And that's just a power play. That's me trying to feel like I'm in control or that I'm winning. And I've had to grow to the place where like we have to say, hey, what are we after here? What is the goal? What am I looking for on the other side? And I'll just share, we've shared this a number of times on the podcast, but one of the tools that has been really helpful to me, a couple things, I'll just say the principles. One, don't speak in absolutes. You always, you never, those things never, that never goes well, all right? Always and never.
It always goes badly.
Yeah.
It never goes well.
Watch out for the barbs that you have as a pattern. Like one of the ones that she called me out so bad on, I was using this forever, is like that everything was so simple. I would be like, oh, it's just really simple, which is basically like, you're an idiot and you don't understand things, but so simple. Yeah, I know. Now it's a joke. It was not a joke in that season. But another tool, and this is from Brene Brown, who's a shame researcher, secular author, but she has this little phrase that she talks about in conflict that is, this is gold. If you could apply this, it'll really help you. It's a great tool in conflict, is to always frame what you're experiencing as the story I'm telling myself is. The story I'm telling myself is that you didn't clean up after dinner today because you don't appreciate all the work that I do preparing meals and all the things that I do. And so what that does, it allows you to put the thing on the table. So here's what I'm feeling. And what you feel, it may not be true, but for you, it's real. So you're able to put the thing on the table, but then also acknowledge that it's really just the story that I'm telling myself. And it allows us to have this conversation about, okay, here's this thing that I'm feeling. Is it true or is it not? That's just been one thing that we try to practice as much as possible. But let's talk about like escalating. One of the things is just being willing to say, we're not done having this conversation, but we're taking a time out.
I think the time I used to take that, don't go to bed angry with this fear of walking away from an argument. Like, we got to finish this now. And when there is so much tension, again, not a scientist, but if you study the brain, when you get into those modes, like it actually shuts down parts of your brain that can think reasonably, and you're just in like attack mode. And the best thing that you can do is to remove yourself from the situation. But the healthy way to do that is to communicate. We're going to take a break and we will come back at whatever time. Let's take 5 minutes. Let's take an hour, like whatever it is.
It could even be, I love you. We're not getting anywhere right now. I'm committed to this conversation. What you're saying is legitimate in terms of like, it needs to be talked about, but we're going to wait until we're rested to deal with it. Yeah.
And never, ever underestimate the power of prayer is to step away. It's important to pray together. There are times like this where even recently we had this disagreement and I knew I was not in a good headspace, but I was really wrestling with that internal, I was in fight mode. And for me, it was actually going to my bedroom and sitting with God with it, and not in a, God, I need you to make him see, but actually was, God, please show me in my heart, like, what is not aligned with you right now? What do I need to see that I'm not seeing? And I know for me, that was like almost like immediately de-escalated me and was this humbling. By the time we came back together in conversation, it actually started with I am sorry. Like, I'm sorry for how I was speaking to you. Can we just refresh and let's talk through this again? And so, yeah, being willing to step away and letting God's Spirit, sometimes we get so into it, like neither party is letting God's Spirit lead that moment, and like we're just in it. And so to step away and take a minute, I think can be really valuable.
Okay. Change the topic.
I'm ready.
How important is physical intimacy?
Oh, so important. Andy told me to say that. No, I'm just kidding. Hugely important, actually. And I'm going to answer this one first because I came into marriage with some really messed up views on intimacy. And some of that came from well-meaning teachers. I grew up in I'm not going to slam all these, but like True Love Waits, again, nothing against it. But how my brain translated that and had a hard time, got stuck when we got married, was my whole childhood was like, sex is bad. If you have sex, something's gonna fall off. It's like, you are for sure gonna have every disease, and like, you're gonna ruin your marriage and all these things. But then once you say I do, sex is great. You're gonna love it. And I'm not gonna lie, none of that played out the way that at all. And so I grew up afraid of it. And honestly, part of my story was experiencing some abuse outside of marriage, not from him, from others, that I wrestled with. Things were taken from me that I didn't willingly give.
As a teenager, prior to our marriage.
To our marriage. Yeah, not Andy. That I couldn't quite figure out, how does that play in? I didn't choose it, but now am I spoiled goods? Like, how does this work? And then got into marriage. And with some of the things that type of abuse brings, sex was not awesome right out the gate. I had a lot of things I didn't realize, fears that came in with me. Honestly, some trauma that came in with me that I didn't recognize as that. Like, why am I responding this way? Why does this thing scare me? Why is this just not natural? Like, I feel like it was taught to me that we're going to get a marriage and this will be the best thing ever. And then I was like, this isn't the best thing ever. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. I took a lot of that shame on myself. And then again, we had a lot of unhealth early in our marriage, and I wrestled with, I guess this is just part of my job as a wife. He likes it, I don't, and that's what we do here. Like, it sounds crass, but that's where I landed, was like, I guess this is for the guy. And it's part of my, like, I did my wifely duty. And I don't actually remember when God started to work in me, but God started to do a work. And what that journey has been for me is God actually introducing me to sex is actually a gift, something that God created to be stupid good and wicked fun. And he designed it for marriage. And spoiler alert, I don't know if anyone else is in the boat it's actually not just for the husband. Like, it's actually really good for the wife too. So yeah, but it required for me, I actually had to start studying almost like I was like going back to school. I had to do some studying and learn about my body and about his body and about some of the things that I had gone through and why these things were affecting me. I had to unlearn some things and relearn things. Andy mentioned that I do competitive powerlifting. After my last competition, I actually made the decision to hire a coach, and a coach that is now working with me to shift some of my form, and I'm having to unlearn things. It feels very weird, but the purpose of it is so that I can relearn it in a way that I can progress in this sport. That is actually, not to be weird to powerlifting to sex, but like, that has been true of our intimacy. I had to actually unlearn some things, rewire my brain and things. And this is a marriage event, so I know some of you are married yet. I don't mean to be inappropriate, but I just want to say it. It's worth the effort. Women, I can only speak to women. I'm not a man. Wives, it is actually worth that effort, because I am discovering that intimacy is hugely important, and not just for the husband. And it can be something that you will enjoy your husband in a way that is next level. It affects everything, your intimacy and your relationship, not just physically, but across the board. But the idea that just happens is not true for most people. Maybe you're a natural. Congratulations. Write a book. I needed a lot of books to help me. And how important? Hugely important. Easy? Not at all. But worth every bit of effort. And I will say there are actually Christian counselors that help people with this now. This is something that there are resources, there's help out there, and I honestly think the enemy, part of how he has affected marriage, is put a lot of shame in the bedroom. And I feel like God's design for the marriage bedroom is actually freedom and worship. And so, like, we have worship services, not just on stages at churches. We worship at home, and that is a worship celebration that actually brings glory to God. And when you experience that, and we still are learning and growing, but when you experience that, it almost makes me mad at the devil that he held me for so long, believing that it was supposed to be less than that. So if you're new in marriage, you are welcome. Early on, do the work, do the research, because the only regret I have is that it took me so long to actually start growing in this.
I think one of the greatest gifts of marriage is that it's a commitment for life. And so the beauty of it, one thing I love that, like, we have times where our intimacy is awkward and weird and doesn't go amazing.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we got a lifetime. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not a big deal. There's not that was not what we thought was going to. So there's beauty of that. And to me, I look at it the perspective of, I have the opportunity to have a lifelong journey with my wife, to be a student of her joy. And that part of it as a husband, I would say, to become a student of your wife and to live that life. And I think I've gone from bachelor's degree and I'm working my way up I want to get advanced doctorates. Yeah. But it's that lifelong journey of learning that I think is the joy of it. At some point, God has helped reorient us towards that type of a pursuit. A couple other principles, and we probably need to do a longer podcast on this at some point, but one of the myths, like you talked about the myth of like true love waits, like no sex and then have sex and it's amazing. Another thing that I think is a temptation for us, and some of it's cultural, is that it's always going to get better all the time. It's like a thermostat that is just going from 50 degrees to 51 degrees, and then it's 80 degrees, and then it's 82. Like, we have one of the languages that we've learned in a lot of areas of our marriage, but this is true of intimacy, is we have seasons where we say, we need to just reset. Simplify. It could be frequency, it could be the type of intimacy, and we just say to simplify things, and like a reset is a really good and healthy thing. We have times where we schedule intimacy. Like, this is one of the practices that we did, especially when my kids are listening. That was what that emoji on the calendar meant when you'd see it. Sometimes the pressure when you're no, but this is just, again, when you're working two jobs, there were times we were both working jobs, we have kids at home, you're running Needham Enterprises, all this stuff's going on. And if you're not careful, intimacy just gets the leftovers of your life. It gets your most tired moments. It's the end of the day. Everybody's exhausted. And rather than doing that by saying, okay, Tuesday or whatever it is, that took off so much pressure of, are we going to do the dance? Are we doing this night? All that kind of stuff. It just made it so much simpler. And so that's just a couple things that come to mind. Anything you want to add before we move on to the next question?
If it works for you, a great tip that someone gave us at one point was, if you're going on a date night, schedule intimacy on the front end. Don't wait for intimacy after the date night, and actually allows you to give your best energy to it, and it just removes the pressure from the night. So if you get home from dinner and you're exhausted, it's fine, because just a different way to look at it.
So I think this is a great last question. We talked about community, and when we share our story, we talk a lot about how many people have showed up for us, and we've been invited to show up for other people. We get a lot of questions about that because I don't think that's everybody's experience. And so this one says, how do you find your community if you don't have it? How do you get into it? Where do you start? How do you begin?
So the first word that comes to mind is hospitality. Honestly, here's the thing about community. We are in a place we get to talk about these beautiful relationships. And some of you have communicated like, that's really good for you. That's not our experience. I'm sitting here in a room looking at a lot of people who clearly live within driving distance of here, who have set aside time to invest in your marriage, which tells me that you have a number of other couples within driving distance from you that are actually at some level invested in their future marriage, their current marriage, or they're in this. There is no easy way to cultivate community. It takes risk and vulnerability. And like I mentioned earlier, somebody has to go first. And so oftentimes what this looks like is, candidly speaking, is you finding somebody in this room and putting yourself out there with, hey, could we maybe get each other's cell phone numbers and set a time that we can get together? It may not work the first time. I think we mentioned this earlier. We've experienced rejection in this too. I have had people that I have really been like, man, I want to have a relationship with this person. It's not always malicious. Sometimes they just are so busy and bogged down that it just hasn't worked out. We actually challenged ourselves with this recently. In 2019, we moved. And that was one of the first times we experienced trying to start a new community in a different season of life. We no longer had little kids. If you have little kids, enjoy the time where you have an instant community, because your kids will be friends with anyone. And so you find someone with kids that age and you're like instant friends. Your kids will get to an age where they're going to have an opinion about their friends, and you may want to be friends with that person's mom, but they're not going to be friends with that person's kid. And it's not as easy. It gets more complicated. And then you add to that, you go to work full time, your kids are it really actually doesn't get easier. And so part of it is you getting more intentional. We said we want to make sure in our marriage that we keep space for new people all the time, that we don't get so sucked into our tight community of people that we shut out people that may be looking for community. And so I would encourage you to look at your life. Where can you make space for community? And then be willing to be the person that invites, hey, do you want to come over? If you have a place they literally can't come over for whatever reason, then, hey, do you want to meet at such and such a place, whatever it is? And then be willing to start being vulnerable. It's risky. I'm going to be honest. You might get hurt in this process. Just like in marriage, the deeper you go, the more vulnerable it gets. But the gift of it is what we have been describing to you in these relationships. The gift of taking that risk and pushing in and creating space and sacrificing whatever needs to be sacrificed to start connecting with people is that in these moments when community is needed, then you've cultivated this beautiful community that can be around you. But it takes work. This may sound like a downer, but I'm just going to be blunt. You all sitting in this room together and having conversations at a table does not make community. You could very well leave this space and never talk to the people that you just spent 24 hours with. It actually is an ongoing effort of pushing in, and somebody's got to put in that effort. And so if all of you in this room decided to do this, I'd make a pretty bold guess that if we came back a year from now, we'd have a lot more people oh my goodness, I'm starting to experience community. And yeah, I wish there was an easier path to it, but
yeah, I think that would be one of my leading challenges for everybody who's here today, is whether it's somebody in this room or somebody else in the church or someone that you know, is how could you take a next step in relationship? And it doesn't have to be this extravagant meal or anything. It can be as simple as, hey, after church with our messy, loud kids, we're going to go to whatever, Wendy's. And we're just going to sit there and we're going to slowly get to know each other's story. I think that the lie that the enemy wants to use for all of us is that if you let other people know what your struggles are, what your challenges are, how imperfect your marriage is, that they would respect you less. And my experience, when you do that in a grace-saturated way that points people to Jesus, is it just draws them in more. And it actually raises people's perspective on who you are. So, yeah.
The one encouragement I would make is the temptation is to always flock to your own. Oh, I'm with kids. I'm going to be with people with kids. There is such great value in connecting with people that are outside your season. Don't pigeonhole into, I got to find this exact couple that meet. It's like you're online dating for another couple. You're you got to meet all these criteria to be my community. Actually, how the body of Christ works most beautifully is when you get in community with people that think differently than you, that are living in different seasons than you, that's actually where we grow. Because if you're just sitting with people that agree with everything that you say and everything, you're all the exact same, nobody's growing in that. You're just in an echo chamber with a few other people. Be willing to look outside of your season of life, people who, again, this is not going to be perfect. Community gets messy. It's important because we all learn from each other. We all grow through that.
That's great. That's a great place for us to leave off. Are you ready to get a puppy?
Guys, we're getting a puppy. Maple May, I'm coming.
Again, I just want to say a special thank you to Hope Church. Can we give a hand to Steve and Maggie, the team that put this day together? Incredible. Look, I don't have favorite churches, but if I did, no, I really do love the staff here. I'm so grateful for what God is doing here. And when we talk about revival, I think it's beautiful to have these conversations about marriage because I think that one of the paths to it are strong marriages. And so thank you for investing your time here today. And as we like to say, bye.
Bye.